Welcome everyone to today's session of our Jet Report Success webinar series. Just a quick introduction. My name is Brian Robinson. I'm a training and reporting consultant here at Jet Reports out of lovely Portland, Oregon, although it's not quite so lovely today. And I want to thank you for joining me for the next 20 to 30 minutes for today's session. Since this is a GoToWebinar, everyone out there is going to be on mute. But if you have a question, you can type it into the question pane. Now, I'm not going to stop to answer questions. If I have time at the end of the session, I'm going to come back and I'll answer as many questions as I can. If we don't have time for that, we will follow up with you via email and get your question answered that way. We are recording today's session, and we will make that available to you about next week when you go to the pane or the page where you originally registered. You'll find a link to this video and previous sessions, and you can always go back there to find future sessions that we're going to be recording and posting on there. Today's subject is the Jet browser. Now, some of you might be familiar with this tool and some of you might not be familiar with it, but we're going to give you just a quick overview and give you some techniques that we think are useful when you're using the browser. Now, before we get into our content, you might be asking, why are we hosting these free monthly success series? Well, to be frank, it's right in the name. We want you to be successful with our product. So if you're productive with our product, if you find it useful, you're going to continue to use it, right? And selfishly, Jet is a great place to work, and I'd like to continue working here. So we need to get people using our product and really being active and vocal and really enjoying the product. So we want to give you some success using our product, which benefits everybody. We have some upcoming sessions. We are doing this once a month. Next month in July, we've got Amy, who is going to present using the Jet Professional to build dynamic dates. This is a really useful technique and really is one of our more popular things that we show in our classes and our workshops. So if you can make it to that next session, I think it is a really useful, really interesting technique that you can use to build dynamic dates within Excel using Jet Professional. Then in August, we've got Harry, and he's going to be presenting on the Jet Web Portal. This was a new feature that we added to Jet Professional 2017, and it's changed a bit since we first introduced it. So he's going to talk to you about what it is and what it can do. You can go out and register for those now, get ready, get set, go, or maybe you wait until the end of this session before you go out and try and register for those, because I'm super interesting and you want to listen to me first. But keep those in mind. We're going to do this about once a month, usually the same, second Thursday or so of each month, depending on the month itself. Now, I've mentioned that this is a series that we're hosting on a monthly basis, and it's important to know, why in the world am I here? Meaning you, why are you here? Why are you listening to me? Why are we telling you this stuff? And who the heck are you and your company? Well, let's start with our company. I want to tell you a little bit about us, right? We've got this slide here that says, hey, we've got all this great marketing-heavy description here about unparalleled access to data, and we hit those fancy keywords of business analytics and cost-effective. But really, to me, what this slide is telling you is this. Since 2002, we've made it really easy for 10,000 companies in 94 countries to access their data in real time within Excel itself without having to know any querying languages like SQL or MDX, anything else that you can think of. This gives the average user at your company access to data that they didn't have before, which allows them ease of reporting, faster decision-making, right? Those types of things. And so that's really what this slide is telling you. For the past 15 years, that's our goal. That's what we provide to our clients. Okay? As for me, why should you listen to me specifically? Well, first off, I have a background in both computer programming and accounting, so can we say super nerdy here? Secondly, I've been with Jet Reports for about 3 years now. In fact, my 3-year anniversary is coming up in just a couple of weeks, so hopefully there's some sort of maybe surprise party in the plans, wink, wink, nudge, nudge to those of you at Jet that are currently listening. But really, to be serious, in those 3 years, my primary focus has been teaching users how to use and be successful with our product. So I just want to impart some of that knowledge in this really brief session. So let's get started with our topic for today. Our agenda is, first off, what is the Jet browser? As I said, some of you are familiar with it, some of you are not familiar with it. So we need to be familiar with what the heck it is. Right? Then we'll get into just a brief overview of what it is. Right? What am I looking at when I open up the Jet browser? And then we're going to actually use it in a real-world example of how you might specifically use this. How can I apply this to my own life and my own job? So that's how we want to kind of address today's session. So what is the Jet browser? Well, we have a nice little screenshot of it right here to the right, and maybe you thought, oh, I didn't know that was called the Jet browser. I just call it that thing that I open up. Right? Who knows? As my kids would say, it's the thingy. Right? But what is it? It's going to provide you a easy-to-use interface for report designers to be able to browse tables and fields within a given data source. Right? So I can look at different information in there. It also provides some drag and drop functionality to create some basic reports, and we'll see a little bit of that today. I'm not going to go into the grand, every little aspect of the browser. Right? There's a lot more to it than what we have time for in 30 minutes. And you can always go out to our knowledge base and learn more about it. But we're going to see a little bit of that drag and drop functionality. We're going to see a little bit of the exploration. But really, one of the things I really like about the browser is it allows me to set up favorites. Right? Efficiency experts always say, cluttered desk, cluttered mind. Well, if you clear out your desk and have your nice open space, there's less going on, less to take in. And that's kind of what our favorites will do for us within the browser. It's going to clear up our workspace. As we'll see, you might want to use that on a more regular basis than maybe what you're actually doing. Okay? So let's go ahead and open up the browser. I've already got Excel here, and you're going to find your browser right in the middle of your Jet tab here. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and open this up here. We'll see the browser. Let's go ahead and open that up. And, oh, look at that, it opens up on another monitor for me. Isn't that helpful? So here's what I'm talking about when I talk about the browser. Now, just as an overview, you've got your tables on the left. I only have just a few tables to search through. And on the right, those are the specific fields in any given table that I might have selected. So for example, if I come down here and I choose accounting period, I can see that I have different fields than what I would have in access control or account schedule name. And the nice thing about this is I can go table by table and see what I have access to within there. I can also try and look for certain tables. Right? If I'm looking for maybe information about items, right, I think, well, there's probably some sort of table called item or has the word item in it. Right? If I click on a table and I just type in the letter I, look at that, it drops me straight down to my I's. If I get a little bit faster, ITEM, look at that, drop me right to a table called item. Now this is a really useful feature. However, people misconstrue what it is. It is not a search and find feature, it is a jump to feature. So for example, I can look through and I typed in item and I can see there's a lot of different tables called item. And I can see a lot of different tables that don't have the word item in it. And I come through and I say, you know what, we've got all these service items, items that are services. I don't see anything in my tables that mentions that. And the reason for that is because, well, there is a separate table down here called service item. So just by typing in the word item, it didn't find the word item, it jumped to a table that started with the word item. So we can use this as a jump to, but it's not a true search and find functionality of it. Now let's go back to our A's here and look at our accounting period, because I want to look at our accounting period and take a look at some of the information that we can see in the field. So I've selected the table accounting period. I can click on any one of these and I can say, okay, well, what does name mean? Accounting period name. Jeff, Steve, oh, no, oh, look, I can drop down that little arrow and I can see that there are some months. I can get an idea of what values I might find in there. This isn't going to give you every single value that it finds in that field. It's going to give you some sample values in there. And as we see when we start going through our use case, this is helpful and not helpful at the same time. And you'll see how that might not be helpful. But this is a really good idea as I come through and explore new fiscal year. Oh, it's either true or false. Starting date. I can look at the starting date and I can infer that maybe the starting date always happens to be on the first of the month of any given year. So I can get a little bit of information from here, but if I'm looking for something very, very specific, that drop-down feature may or may not work for me. But it's a really good way to get an idea of what it is. Again, right now we're looking at the browser as not a truly search and find functionality. We're using it as an exploratory tool, okay? And we'll kind of put that into practice in just a few minutes. I can go through and say, you know what? As I scroll through here, I can see that I have, oh, look at that. I have some gold stars next to some tables here. And what those are my favorite tables. These are the tables that I use all the time. Well, the nice thing about tagging these as favorite tables, not only do they stand out a little bit as I'm scrolling around, right? But if I'm looking for the item table, I know it's a favorite table, but as I'm scrolling down, it still doesn't really help me narrow it down. I see the dots and, oh, okay, so I have to, oh, here it is, right? I get an idea of where it is, but it still doesn't make it stand out so much that it's really easy to find. Well, up here in the browser toolbar, we have some tools. I'll just point out a couple key things. This first section is what data source am I connected to? You can see I'm connected to our JET training database, and I'm connected to our JET Corp USA company within there. Now, yours may or may not have that, depending on your specific data source. I'm going to skip over these rows and records for right now and go to this favorites. What does the favorites button do? I turn it on, and what do I see? I've now cleaned up my desk, and I've cleared out all that clutter. I had about 1,000 tables to search through before. Now I just see the, 10 tables that I use with great regularity. This is a really useful feature because as you're building reports, you're going to find that you hit the same 5, 10, 15 tables over and over and over again. And so maybe you just start tagging them as favorites. Or maybe you talk to somebody else in the company and they say, oh, these are my favorite tables. These are things that I find really useful. You might want to tag those as favorites too. Sharing information within the company is really useful. What if I want to add a favorite that didn't already exist as a favorite? Well, I want to add this accounting period. I think I'm going to use that quite a bit. So I'm just going to come over here and click on that star. Perfect. Now it's a favorite table. When I turn on my favorites, look at that right at the top. The accounting period is there. Now, I thought I was going to use that. I'm probably going to find that I don't use it very often, so maybe I unfavorite it. Unfavorite it goes away. Very easy to do. These favorites will also carry into some of your most of your other design tools, so keep that in mind. Clean mind, clean desk really makes life a little bit easier. Okay? So that's just a general overview of our browser here. Now, one last thing that we will see in here is one thing that a lot of people notice when I'm doing trainings that they don't see in their own specific browser are these numbers right next to my table names. You'll say, what the heck are those? Those aren't table numbers. They're not just magic numbers that appear out of nowhere. What are they? These are the number of records in those tables. So what we can do in our use case, we'll see how that might benefit us as we're going through and trying to figure out what we need. So Brian, how do I turn that on? How do I get these numbers on my own? Well, that's handled in the data source settings. Now, if you have access to your own data source settings, you can come in, we can open this up, we can go to display, and you can turn on that display table record count. Okay? That gives me an idea of which tables are being used, which ones aren't being used, which ones are heavily used, which ones have minor stuff in there. So I can see certain tables, all of my analysis tables, they're completely empty. I'm probably not going to use those tables. Okay? So that's just one little aspect of there that a lot of people don't know about, but it's a really helpful feature. Okay? So let's get into our use case, and we'll kind of finish off our session talking about this use case, because this is a very common thing that people might run into when they start using JET Professional. Okay? So we're just starting using JET reports at our company, and I'm familiar with my ERP system. I post invoices all the time and credit memos and these transactions and payments, and I do all these other things in my ERP. But now I'm being asked to create a report in Excel using Jet Professional. And I need a report that shows me all of my general ledger transactions associated with customer payments. Okay, well, I don't necessarily know where that is, right? I might be able to find those in my ERP system. I can go, oh, yep, that's right here. But what you see in there may not necessarily match the table names and the fields within the database, right? So if I've said, hey, you know what, I've got this thing, and I know that when I go look at those general ledger transactions, I go to these tables called general ledger transactions, right? So I can open up my browser and I can type in general, okay, well, I see general ledger setup and general posting setup, but I don't see anything that says general ledger transactions. Okay. And I can come in here and well, maybe it's abbreviated. Nope. Oh, okay. So I might get a little confused. So what is it I'm going to do? There's a couple things that we can do right off the bat. First thing we can do is hopefully maybe someone has set favorites for us. If somebody has set favorites for us or shared those with us, these are the tables that we use quite a bit. Start with these. Right? I can go through and maybe take a look, and I can say, oh, look, I have these G/L. Maybe that stands for general ledger. Be probably a pretty good guess. Okay? But I don't see anything about transactions. Maybe it's this entry table. Right? And I can see that it's heavily used. I've got almost 500,000 records in that table. We're hitting, and we know we're posting stuff all the time, invoices and payments and credit memos and POs and all these things. Chances are those are hitting the general ledger. Right? They're all going to be associated with some sort of account that we go through. So I can tell that of all these tables, this is one of my heavily used tables. So why don't I go through there and explore that? What are things that I might need in this report? I might need the general ledger account number. Oh, look at that. I've got the general ledger account number. I've got the GL account name. I might need to know the amount of that transaction. Do I have the amount? Oh, look at that. I've got the amount. Right? And I can verify that these are true, what I'm looking for, general ledger account name. I can drop that down and say, yep, those are general account names. Those look familiar. The general ledger account numbers, those look really familiar. So I'm on my way. I can get the account number. I can get the account name. I can get the amount of those transactions. Maybe I need to see that, oh, look, there's a date. Yep. Happened on different days. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going through there and I'm saying, all right, this seems like a really solid table. And then I need to say, well, wait, that report needed to show only things associated with the customers. And I say, well, chances are I'm going to want to show the customer number, and I'm going to come up here and I go, there's the customer group code. I don't see customer number in here. Okay. So maybe you go talk to somebody, right? Your mentor, your boss, and they say, oh, yeah, it's in that table. I'm about to hop on a call. I can't help you right now, but I promise you all the information you need is in the GL entry table. It's there for you. So you're going to come back to your desk a little defeated because you're saying, I already looked through there. I think that person's wrong. I can't find it. So there's two techniques that we can use. The first one, not really the best. It's like the hunt and peck technique of typing. It's not the most effective. When that hunt and peck is, I take this field, I drop it down. Nope, that doesn't look like a customer number. Nope, 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 right? And I can keep going through there. I only have 60 of these fields to look through, so that's really effective use of my time going through item or line by line looking for a customer number. Now, I mentioned that this drop-down, these sample values are useful, but not useful at the same time. They're useful to give you some idea of what's in there, but they're only showing you a sample value. It may not show a number that you're familiar with. Right? And so if you're familiar with C100075 as a customer number, I'm going to think in my head, well, that's the number I'm going to look for. Right? And I can go through this entire table, and maybe I looked at every single one of these, and I couldn't find anything when I dropped it down and searched through it that I found C100075. So then what do I do? Okay. So this is where we kind of get stuck a little bit. Okay? And I use that customer number C10075 because I can say in my head, I've been posting all these payments and these transactions. I know that customer had a payment in January. So if I can find that customer number in that month, right, in a table, well then I know what I'm looking for. So here's how I would go about doing this, and what I do with clients a lot as I'm exploring their data, because you can have custom tables and all kinds of stuff. We connect with all types of data sources. I can't be familiar with everybody's. So here's what I do. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change a value up in my ribbon or my toolbar here. I'm going to change this rows to table. Okay. What does that do? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to take this table name, the GL entry. This is the table I want to kind of peruse and look through. I'm going to click and drag and drop that into my report. That looked super helpful. It put in the word table for me. How is that supposed to help me? Well, when I run this report, what it's going to do is it's going to pull every field and every record from that table. Now, right now, that would be a terrible idea, right? I have about 500,000 records in my GL entry table, and I had about 60 fields. So that's only going to return about, 30 million cells of data? That's probably going to take a really long time, and I cross my fingers that Excel doesn't run out of memory. So what can I do? Well, once you drag that in there, open up the Jet function wizard and add some criteria to narrow down your focus. How did I know what customer I was going to look for? Well, I processed the payment for customer C10075 in January. So you know what? I'm going to put a filter on here to say, you know what? Sometime in January, I processed a payment for that customer. Now, I'm not going to put in the filter for a customer name or a customer number, because remember, that's what I'm looking for. So I don't know what that filter would be. So I'm going to get all the customer numbers back. Okay? But I know it's going to be a smaller subset. I can guarantee that January is going to be significantly smaller than 500,000 records. You might want to narrow it down a little bit more depending on how large this table is, maybe a week. Maybe you actually go out to the database and you find out what day you posted that payment on, right? The more you can narrow it down, the better off you're going to be, because you might return too much data. Now, this is a small database, local file. It's going to be really quick on my machine. I think it takes about 4 seconds. There we go. Look at that, 4 seconds. And what did this do? It returned about 6,000 records, almost 7,000 records. And what I can see is every single record within that time period, and I can see every single field within there. Now what I can do is I can do good old Excel find. What am I doing? Well, I know customer C10075. Let's go ahead and find all those in this document. Well, the first one it found was right here in the description. Direct cost 10075. Hey, look, there's that customer number. But as I scroll through here, what do I see? I see other customer numbers. I see order numbers. So that's probably not what I'm looking for, right? Okay, so I can pretty much rule out all of column P. That's where the description was. So let's scroll on down past P, see what else Excel found. What's this AR column? And I come over to AR, and what do I see? It's way down here. I see the customer number. Oh, look, and it's even telling me that it's a source type of customer. That's helpful. Oh, look, and here's another customer number. What the heck is this column? Source number. So by using this technique, I've now discovered that the source number represents the customer number. That's super helpful. So what I can do is I can come in here just like any other Excel table and drop this down and say C10075. There it is. Ah, look at that. But now I notice something else. They only had one payment in that year, or in that month. I have 15 records here. What gives? So now I can kind of explore these records specific to this customer. And as I scroll over, look at this. I've got this thing about document type. They had a bunch of invoices. They also had one payment. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to return information, and when I want to know the customer number, it's going to be source number. But it looks like I'm probably going to need to filter on this document type of payment. Okay, that's really good to know as I go through there. Okay. So let's switch this just to payment, and we can kind of verify this information. Yep, I only have that one record. And what I like to do is come back over here to the source number. Let's turn that off. Let's see what, oh, look at that. I also have the source type of bank accounts. So if I were just to run the information, right, maybe I only want to see those customer payments, not the bank account payments. So I've discovered just by doing this that I also have to filter and give a criteria to that source type. Okay. So these are ways that you can go through and explore your data by using a combination of the browser and Excel. Use Excel to do the heavy lifting for you. You go through and find all the stuff for me and then explore what I'm doing and use the ability to use the ability to filter on those Excel tables to narrow my focus down to find exactly what I'm looking for. So this is something that I do a lot with clients when I'm trying to understand their tables and their database and what it is that we're looking at for, because they may not be familiar with the data. These are techniques that you can use yourself. Right? So what have we learned through this use case? Well, we know we're going to need the GL entry table. We use a combination of the favorites and the record count and exploring those fields on the right-hand side to say, yep, I think I've got most of the stuff that I want. I discovered that the customer number is called source number in the GL entry table. Who would have thought? By using the table feature, right? I drag the table name into Excel from the browser, and I run the report after I apply some filters. Really, really important, apply those filters so you don't get everything. And then I use Excel's find to go through and look for the value that I know exists in this table, and then I can narrow down my focus. Lastly, we discovered that we're going to need a document type filter because I have invoices and payments and some things that maybe some different types of transactions. So I know I'm going to need a filter in my query to say only payments. And then I also probably going to want to include a source type of customer because I'm not interested in those payments to those bank accounts. I'm just interested in my customer payments. So we found all that out in just about 10-15 minutes by using a combination of the browser and Excel. Okay. Now, how are you going to remember all this? Well, you can go to this knowledge base article, snapshot, remember all that, but that's really hard to remember. You can go to our Jet ribbon, go to the help, and then click knowledge base, and then search for the word browser. Now, what do I mean by the Jet ribbon and help? Right, come in here, Jet ribbon, help, knowledge base. Once you go in there, oops, I'll grab the right one here. We can search for browser, and look at that, using the Jet browser in Jet Professional. Okay. Here's a nice little article for you with some videos as well. Okay. So some really informative stuff out there that you can go through. You will have access to this recording next week when you go to register for all our other fantastic series. Don't forget, coming up in July, we've got our dynamic dates. And in August, we've got our Jet web portal discussion. So really great topics coming up. I encourage everybody to go out there and sign up. And unfortunately, it looks like we're at the end here and I won't have time for questions. I told you I like to ramble on. And look at that, we're at the bottom of the hour. Thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions, you can reach out to our team and they can get you sorted out, or you can go to our knowledge base and learn all kinds of good stuff. Again, this is Brian Robinson. Thank you for joining me.